Hello, everyone. This is our mini series that's continuing. This is episode 4, Communication and Coachability. So, welcome back, yes, to the Brass Ass YouTube podcast, folks. I am your host, Suitcase Ace. Now, look at hockey is fast, it's physical, and it's intense, right? But underneath all the speed and skill, there's something that separates players who just play the game to the players who really grow in the game of hockey. And that's the communication and the coachability. So in today's episode, it's all about how to listen, how to respond, and how to turn feedback into your biggest advantage. Because let's be honest again, right? Nobody likes hearing criticism, but the players who embrace it, well, folks, those are the players who climb the ladder in the game of hockey. So, why communication matters, folks, right? Well, hockey is a team sport, but it's also a communication sport. Every shift is a conversation, maybe not with words, but with signals, eye contact, and trust. And communication just doesn't stop on the ice. No, it's about how you talk to your coaches, your teammates, even your trainers. And if you're closed off, if you're too proud, you're shutting the door on opportunities to improve. And that is the truth. I got a quick story for you before we get into this episode, folks. You know, when I was playing in Nashville, right, we had a rookie, right, who never spoke up, right? He'd nod when the coach gave instructions, but you could tell he really didn't get it. And he was a good hockey player, but he didn't get it. He'd just nod. Instead of asking questions, he'd go out and make the same mistakes over and over again. Finally, our coach, right, he pulled this kid aside and said, "Kid, I'd rather you ask me 10 times in practice than blow it once in a game." I heard that, and that stuck with me. That really did. And the lesson here, coaches don't expect you to know everything, folks. No, they don't. But they expect you to listen, ask, and adjust. Okay. So what coachability really means then? Well, being coachable, folks, isn't just about saying yes, coach, right? It's about showing that you're willing to grow, right? So I want to break this down for you. Body language. Are you rolling your eyes when you get corrected, or are you locked in? Right? Effort after feedback. Do you actually try what the coach told you, or do you go back to your old habits? And your attitude, right? Do you see criticism as an attack or as a gift, right? You know what? I remember one of my coaches, right? A very good coach, right? That made it to the National Hockey League coaching. I won't mention his name right now. I remember him saying, "I don't waste my breath on players I don't believe in." No. Think about that for a moment, right? Look if a coach is giving you feedback, it means they care enough to help you, right? Because I'll tell you why. The worst thing a player can hear is silence, right? Look at the guys like Mark Stone or Zach Hyman, for example, right? They weren't handed ice time, folks. They weren't. They earned it because coaches trusted them to do the little things right. And that started with being coachable. Okay? Seriously. And turning feedback into growth, folks, is huge, right? So how do you actually take feedback and turn it into improvement then? Is the big question, right? Well, here are a few practical steps for you that I'm going to give you. Listen fully, folks, right? Now, don't start defending yourself, folks. Midway through the conversation, players, don't defend yourself. What you got to do, you got to repeat it back to the coach, right? with just the simple, so you want me to angle wider, right, on the forecheck, right? I'll tell you, when you just you give you repeat it back to the coach, this shows that you understand, folks, right? And on it, act on it immediately, right? If your coach tells you to keep your stick in the lane, do it the very next shift. Follow up after practice also, folks, I'm telling you, and go and ask the coach, was that better? Because you know what? This last one is huge. Follow up shows that you're engaged in what the coach is trying to teach. It shows that you want to improve, let's say. And trust me here, folks, coaches notice, right, that effort. You know, the payoff of coachability, folks, and this is huge. Coachability, it really separates. I don't care if you're the most skilled player in the entire universe. If you're not coachable, then you're in trouble, right? So the payoff of coachability is huge. When you're coachable, I'll tell you why. Doors open for you. You get more ice time. You get leadership roles, and you get noticed, right? Because I'll tell you, I've seen fourth line grinders who became captains just because they listened, they learned, and led by example, right? And I've seen huge talented players ride the bench, because they thought that they knew it all, right? But here's the truth. Talent gets you in the door, right? Coachability keeps you inside that dressing room. And that is the truth. Listen to that one and write that one down. So I got advice for players, folks, right? So if you're heading into a new season, a new team, or even just a new role, here's my challenge for you players out there. Be the player who listens. Be the player who asks questions. And be the player who turns every bit of feedback into fuel. And you know what? You won't just make yourself better. You're going to make your entire team better. And that's the kind of player every single coach wants on the ice when the game's on the line. And that is the truth. I gave you a lot of information again here on the Brass Ass Podcast, folks. And that's it for today, right? Today's episode on the Brass Ass. Communication and coachability. Yeah, they sound simple, but they're the backbone of success in the game of hockey. And remember, folks, feedback isn't criticism. It's opportunity, right? Embrace it, and you'll stand out in ways talent alone never could. So, folks, if you like today's episode, I want you to share it with a teammate, a coach, right? And don't forget to subscribe because you don't want to miss the next one, right? I'm Suitcase Ace, folks, and thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you next time, right? And next time, and speaking of the next time, well, the next one, we're going to dive into the episode number 5 in this 7-part mini-series. We're almost done, and the next one's huge too, the mental side of adversity, right? We'll talk about dealing with being scratched, benched, or even cut, and how the best players turn setbacks into comebacks, right? Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it, right? So thanks a lot for listening, folks, and I'll see you next time. And because you know what, you always know you have just listened to the rest of the story.